6 a.m. last week, and the printing presses at Mingpao work overtime. Vancouver's Chinese language daily pounds out a special 8-page supplement to mark the 60th anniversary of the Nanking Massacre. It's a brutal chapter in World War II history that saw over 250,000 Chinese being killed and tortured by Japanese soldiers over a matter of weeks. A chapter in history that's been kept silent for most of the last 60 years, until now. Paul Lin is a historian who specializes in Chinese history. Although he was born and grew up in BC, he still remembers the outrage and disbelief in the local Chinese community when Japanese soldiers began their killing spree in Nanking, then capital of China.
The scale of it, of course, was incredible. I mean, indiscriminate killing of civilians, and including the deliberate massacre of children, women and children, was on a scale matching, I think, the Holocaust.
This is how bad it was. An estimated total of 350,000 Chinese civilians were killed, mostly women and children. Close to 80,000 women were raped and mutilated, all at the hands of the Japanese military in that dark December in Nanking. The Japanese government has yet to admit to what they did in Nanking, let alone apologize to the victims and survivors of the massacre.
Nice to see you. It's so good to see you.
Two women meet in Vancouver Airport for the first time. Iris Chang, a third-generation Chinese American, and Tekla Lit, a recent Chinese immigrant from Hong Kong. They are meeting for one common cause: to break the silence that has shrouded the Nanking Massacre for more than half a century.
For many Chinese or Asian people, they would like to, we have this kind of a shame culture. So we don't want to let other people know about our unhappy, past. So I think this is one of the reasons why, these things is not so well known by other people.
Why is it that we don't really hear about it that much?
Well, I think it's because of the Cold War. After 1949, both the PRC and Taiwan both needed Japan as an ally against each other. So we have a situation in which the Japanese were really not forced to face the wartime past the way the Germans were forced to. This is a book that I really wrote, out of sheer outrage and passion.
Iris Chang has spent the last 3 years writing the first English language book on the Nanking Massacre. Chang's family was living in Nanking before the massacre took place. Her first encounter of the incident were stories told to her by her grandparents. When she grew up, she was surprised to find very little information on the massacre.
This event is not really unknown in China, but it is largely unknown in the U.S.
But that changed as she started researching for the book.
I'll never forget Li Shouying, the woman who fought off 3 Japanese soldiers while she was, I think, almost 9 months pregnant. They ended up stabbing her 37 times. She lost the baby, but miraculously she survived.
Those survivors who lived to tell found their tragic stories had little effect on Japan. To this day, Japan has refused to acknowledge responsibility.
I think what the Japanese government is hoping is that these people eventually will just die off and then they wouldn't have to deal with the issue anymore.
The vast majority of people in Japan are completely ignorant of the history that, say, Iris Chang is outlining in her more recent book.
Randy Enomoto lives in Vancouver. He's also the president of the National Association of Japanese Canadians. He believes the only way for victims to heal their wounds is by heightening awareness of the incident.
We want to promote harmony and understanding in the Canadian context, and if this is still an issue for many people in the Chinese Canadian community, we need to speak openly across cultural boundaries and to promote some kind of reconciliation. And again, it's by, I think, looking at the truth of history rather than ignoring it or remaining silent.
And for Tekla Lit, breaking the silence on the Nanking Massacre is exactly what she's been trying to do for the last 2 years.
For me, I'm a Canadian here, I'm a Chinese Canadian here. What I can see is, we as Chinese people, and we have a very strong feeling about what happened in our past, in our ancestrals, history. Then, the more we know about it, the more responsibility we have to tell other people.
Lit is also trying to lobby Canadian politicians to put pressure on Japan.
It's not about Chinese people. It's not just about Chinese people's rights. It's about human rights.
Yeah, we'd like to have a picture with me.
Oh, yeah,
For now, this is all victims of the Nanking Massacre have. Activists from abroad to voice their demand for apologies from the Japanese government.
The People's Republic of China has at different occasions acted inexplicably. I mean, they have actually expelled or arrested filmmakers or activists who have tried to promote this event in the history of this event in Nanking. They've made life very difficult for human rights activists who are trying to seek reparations for the victims.
And time is running out for these victims. By last count, there were fewer than 1,700 survivors of the Nanking Massacre still living in China.
It's an issue that is not going to go away soon. I don't know if it'll ever be resolved, but it's not going to go away.
For Broadcast One, I'm Winnie Hwo.